Hi, everyone. So I'm MaryKay Severino. I'm the Education Director at ARISA Lab, and I am the co-lead for the Eclipse Soundscapes Project. And I co-lead the Eclipse Soundscapes Project alongside Dr. Henry Trey Winter, who's the Chief Scientist at ARISA Lab. So what I'll be talking today and presenting on is designing Eclipse soundscapes for broad multisensory engagement in participatory science, which is also sometimes referred to as citizen science or community science. And I'll talk about why eclipses are more than visual and why that matters for broad participation, what Eclipse soundscapes set out to do, and then how we approached it, design principles for broader participation, and then how we applied those principles, and outreach principles for building real connections, and then what they look like in action, and then ultimately some key lessons for future large-scale efforts. So just very brief background on the Eclipse Soundscapes project, so there's some context. It is a NASA citizen science project funded by NASA Science Activation, and it was centered around the 2023 annular eclipse and the 2024 total solar eclipse. And the science question was, how does life on Earth, specifically wildlife, respond to eclipses? This was primarily through soundscapes and audio. If you want to know the answer to that question, I will not be talking about it, but Trey will be on Thursday, so check your schedules. What we did for public involvement was we had 3 different roles, 3 different ways people could get involved in this project. There was the apprentice role, which was a learning role that happened online. There was the observer role, which was a role where people could experience the eclipse and then share their observations back to us, what they saw, what they felt, what they heard, using whatever senses were available to them. And then there was also a data collector role, where people put out little audio recording devices to collect the soundscape audio all along or near the eclipse path. So, where this started, we began this, Trey and I, with some questions. Who is being left out of scientific phenomenon that is perceived as only visual? Everyone's asking, where are you going to see the eclipse? Where are you going to see it? A lot of times science is very visual. I'm going to look through this microscope. It's look. So we thought, who's being left out of that? Probably people who are blind or have low vision, which affects a lot of the population, especially as they age, but also some from birth. So that kind of started us on this path. Right from when we wrote the proposal, we worked with National Federation of the Blind to make sure that this thought wasn't just something that we thought of. But that was only the starting point. That wasn't what we did for the whole project, because we kept asking the question, okay, well, who else might be left out? What about people who won't be viewing it for other reasons? Okay, well, maybe there should be different activities that aren't necessarily on eclipse day. Okay, what about time? Maybe people don't have time to get to the eclipse path. Maybe people don't have money to be able to purchase equipment. How could they get involved? What about people who don't have internet access? How could they get involved? And we just kept asking again and again. And really it was all about meeting people where they were, and we had to keep changing as the project, not asking people to adapt to us. So some of the principles that we used, we designed for flexibility. So we thought about multiple ways for people to get involved. Originally, when we started, we thought, oh, this is going to be cool. They're going to be an apprentice, and then an observer, and then a data collector, and then they're going to go on, and then they're going to get this final certificate because they did everything. And then we realized that's going to take a lot of time. And so if they have to go to school and have jobs, they might not be able to do that. There also might be people who have more interest to just learn about the eclipses and then maybe stay inside on eclipse day. Or maybe there'll be people that only find out about the eclipse 2 hours before it's about to happen because they turned on the news. They probably didn't have time to get equipment. So how could they be involved? So we also thought about modular roles for that same reason. And then we made sure throughout all of it that we made sure our messaging was around that multisensory idea. Where are you going to experience the eclipse, not where are you going to see the eclipse, which could benefit people too who might have had clouds, because they might have felt the temperature drop. They might have heard the changes in the landscape. They might have heard the crickets come out when it got so dark. They might have even heard an owl. So some examples of how we took those principles and we applied them. As I mentioned, we did have the roles as separate modular roles. Some other things that we did, we made sure that the instructions were audio only, video only, picture only, text only, so that you could use any of those to learn how to get involved or a variety of those together. Something else we thought about, as I mentioned, we were working with NFB, or National Federation of the Blind, from the start. How do we make sure if our website's accessible and the instructions are accessible, great. And then you get the equipment in the mail and you can't utilize the equipment. So we thought about how do we alter the equipment? And that's up on the screen too, but in a cost-effective way, like with little bump dots where key switches are, which are just basically things in your house that keep your cabinets from putting holes in the wall. And then made sure the online instructions reference these different sizes. The on switch is where the flat square is. You connect the USB where the rounded bump dot is. We also considered, okay, you get this in the mail. How do you know what this is? I just got a square thing. So, and we also thought, we'll put in instructions that are all in Braille and large print that will allow everyone to use whatever way they need. It's really expensive to print out a booklet that's large print and Braille, which has to be really thick paper, and then you make a mistake. Are you going to reprint them all? So we realized business cards. There's already ways where you can get business cards brailled, and we got them to say, visit eskit.org. That brought people to an accessible site. We wanted to change things. We changed the site. The business card didn't have to change. And it's relatively cheap to be able to do something like this. So that's one way that we applied it. In terms of how, when we thought about people with different internet speeds, okay, people are going to be getting all this audio. Awesome. We're going to have them uploaded. It will only take them 3 days at very high-speed internet dedicated only to us. That would be perfect. They can't do that. So maybe some people could, but not everyone. So we thought, okay, we'll take it on our side. We'll have people use little micro SD cards. They'll mail them back to us. We'll sort it out for very, very many hours. Many. So these were kind of the things we were thinking about how we were applying this. Now, in terms of outreach principles. So these are some of our principles that we tried to apply. National coordination and also direct local outreach. Again, that idea of who isn't involved, how do we invite them? How do we contact them and make sure that they know they're invited to be a part of this? Stay flexible, because we don't know when people are going to find us to get involved. Meet communities where they were. This might be in person, phone, Zoom, whatever was most convenient. And then adapt timelines and materials when they didn't meet the real world needs. So what did this look like in practice for us? We ended up with 2 different kinds of outreach and community engagement. We were trying to make those connections, those bridges. There was top-down coordination. We were working with NFB already. We were reaching out to other NASA science activation partners. We realized that this was much more about coordination and networks than recruitment. And that was valuable. However, it was also really important that we did grassroots outreach at the same time. And so, for example, we're working with NFB at the top, which is national, collaborating, making sure what we're doing makes sense. But we also looked up every single chapter of the National Federation of the Blind, their state and local chapters all along both Eclipse paths, and called and emailed all of them, which also took a long time. But we were able to get some Zoom meetings, pop into some meetings that they were already getting together, and just invite people. Because if a group already thinks they're not a part of it, they're not out looking for it. If everyone else is talking about seeing the eclipse, there really needs to be a hand that grabs people in. We also reached out to libraries. From the top down, we worked with NASA at my library, coordinating with them in a big kind of way. But we also, again, more cold calls and emails. Whenever we were going to something like this, some conference, we called the libraries near where we were going to be. Hey, can we come in and do a presentation? Hey, do you want us to show up and do this? Most times people said yes as soon as they realized we weren't selling things. Like no timeshares. We just want to talk to you about the eclipse. So we found that this was really valuable. Something that we tried and didn't work. We thought we're going to need facilitators. We're going to create a facilitator role. We're going to do it in 2022. We'll get them all organized and trained in advance. It'll be awesome. Let's put a sign up. Let's tell everyone about it. No one signed up, literally no one. It was too early, and we realized we had to welcome people when they showed up. So this meant a lot of individual training of facilitators in a lot of ways. And we just had to roll with it. That's just like, that was one of those elements where the project had to change, not make the communities change, because people might have showed up. Oh, we heard about the annular, and now we heard about your project. We want to get involved. Let's do a Zoom. Let's talk about it. Oh, the Eclipse is next week. What can we do? All right, let's hop on a Zoom. Let's talk about it. I took phone calls sometimes at very random hours when I forgot to turn the business phone call off in my house. Hello, oh, are you Eclipse Soundscapes? Yeah, it's Saturday at 10 p.m., but you know what? We are. Usually we didn't do that. But so we had to be very flexible. And creating that facilitator role on our timeline didn't work. So, takeaways. Starting with the question, who might be left out? And then continuing to ask it over and over and over again, which also means changing things you're doing over and over and over again. Building flexible ways for people to participate, even if it seems super cool that people will continue on this track and get this awesome certificate at the end. It might not be realistic. Adapt the project. Participants shouldn't adapt. We should adapt. And as soon as you realize participants are adapting, that's when we had to rethink, okay, wait a minute, we need to adapt. And plan for iteration, then multiply it by 2, then multiply it by 5, then multiply it by 6. And then it'll be a little longer than that. But it's really worth it. The project changed in a lot of ways, but we're still so happy about what happened in the end. And then in terms of coordination, top down and grassroots at the same time. And cold calling works. Cold emailing works eventually. And then the other thing too, and this, I'm kind of excited because I feel like a lot of this touches upon a lot of what the previous speakers have already said. So it's almost like Deb organized it really well. But this idea of like communities crossing over. And so what worked for us is leadership from the beginning between science and education. I'm an educator. Trey is a scientist. We wrote the proposal together. We planned the project together. We went back and forth between the whole thing. This is what science needs. No, this is what education needs. Back and forth, back and forth. And I think that that's more effective than the science being developed and then trying to grab an educator who's in the classroom already running in circles to give like 10 minutes of feedback. Which I'm sure those 10 minutes were very valuable, but just having that from the start. And as we learn, maybe other people from other communities. So maybe not just a scientist and educator, maybe there should also be some other members. And I think that's how we could improve even further if we had done something like that. So future projects could. And thank you. And this is my required statement at the end. All right.